Well, good morning,
As always,
and
can I ask you to
stop that? Good morning, and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and we do have an interesting show for you today. Not much in the way of news, actually, but do have some interesting bikes to talk about. 5 teens arrested for vehicle theft after a chase. That is a common story, really, isn't it? Foreign Office updates with guidance for bike hire in Thailand. Valentin Debise has notched a double win in World Superbikes, and the interesting thing is he's done it for a Chinese manufacturer that you probably haven't even heard of, ZXMOTO. Brembo are bringing carbon ceramic discs to the road. I just wonder why they're going to bother. The Canadian military is looking at some homegrown electric motorcycles to support their efforts. Verge say the first deliveries of their solid-state battery-powered bike are actually out as we talk. Suzuki have cut £1,000 from GSX 8T range. Honda have shown off a new four-cylinder CB400. A pair of those bikes, along with the matching CB500 4s, and Watsonian can supply a BSA Bantam 350 and a sidecar for under £9,000. And then in depth, we'll look at the other end of the scale. We'll ask if a motorcycle can have too much technology. So stay with me for the next 45 minutes or so as we go through our topical news, occasionally controversial views, and also some better biking tips from time to time. All right, okay, so let's get the first bit of the show sorted out. Now, firstly, I just wanted to talk about here today. I've been coaching riders in survival skills for, well, how long? 1997 actually I started, so a fair old while, and I kind of still struggling to get the graphics set up. Here we go. This is the one that I was trying to do, and if I can get the picture size right, there we go. So survival skills with small s's as well as the big capital S's for my school name for almost 30 years. The principle behind survival skills is simple enough. You learn where things might go wrong for us on two wheels, and then you don't go there if it's humanly possible. And if we do have to go there, we do it very, very carefully indeed. Now, one place not to go is a driver's blind spot for the very simple reason it's an area that cannot be seen into. That is why it is a blind spot, and why the belief prevalent amongst so many motorcyclists that all drivers have to do is check their blind spot properly. It's absolutely nonsensical. Unfortunately, it's a view that road safety continually batters on about, and it's absolute nonsense. Anyway, and of course, the result is that riders continually ride just where drivers can't see them. Now, I had a biker do that to me out on the A40 on Thursday afternoon. It was heavy traffic, everybody escaping London for the Easter weekend. Now, I could just about hear the riders' illegally loud exhaust. If I'd had the radio on or been talking, it would almost certainly have drowned it out. But try as I might, wherever I looked, mirrors, internal, external, shoulder checks, even looking over my shoulder, I still couldn't see the bike. Now, I guessed where it was. It was in the blind spot behind my left shoulder, in the sort of the blocked off area that the rear C pillar creates, which meant basically the rider was actually sort of just alongside the car, so I couldn't see it. And of course, after having sat there for a few seconds, that is actually where he passed me from. Now, overtaking on the inside is always risky because drivers don't expect it. But in heavy traffic, where drivers are swapping lanes every few seconds, trying to find the one that's moving faster, of course, it's even more risky. You know, lane swapping on these kind of roads is actually usually an ineffective strategy. Fluid dynamics shows that, since the speed in lanes actually averages out over any distance, but people will do it, and motorcyclists will sit in the blind spot. And even for a sort of careful driver who had actually checked the mirrors, it would have been easy to assume that there was nothing there and then sideswiped the bike by changing lanes. So this is why I coach people in survival skills. I want them to learn something rather more than just conventional thinking. And if you want to do that, I don't think you can actually do much better than sign up for my e-course. And I am going to give you the link to that. It is here, just going up on stage. It's a new improved link. It'll get you onto the sign up page, £99 for the 8-week course. That's less than the price for a typical breakfast on your breakfast run on a Sunday morning. So why not sign up now and discover a really different way of thinking about motorcycling. Right, now moving on from that relatively swiftly. It's that time of the year again when motorcyclists are being targeted by police. Now, I always like to do the sums. Hampshire Police Roads Safer Roads Unit. Now, they began deploying, they say, 2 motorcyclists in August last year. I wonder why they weren't deploying them earlier. They used to have motorcycles out all the time. Anyway, they have caught, quote, more than 2,200 speeding offences in just 7 months. Now, that sounds a lot. But if you put it another way, it works out about 5 per day per bike, assuming the unit operates 7 days a week, which I'm guessing it will. Now, since it's Easter, of course, the safety interventions have already started. And this rather lovely photo accompanied Operation Apex, which is taking place in Dyfed and Powys in Wales, where officers are, quote, stepping up efforts to keep motorcyclists safe on roads across the region, which of course naturally involves, quote, increased patrols, targeted enforcement on routes considered high risk, and engagement with bikers at key locations. Turn that into your own version of English, if you will. And also often running is Derbyshire's Own the Ride campaign. I dare say there are others, and sadly I expect them to have as little effect as all the others have had. One date for your diary though, but you'll have to be down under to attend this one, sadly. It's the MotoCap Open Day. Let me give you a zoom in of that as well. It's Chris Hurren's motorcycle clothing testing laboratory at Deakin Institute for Frontier Materials. The lab will be open from Saturday, the 11th of April at 10 p.m. right through till 2 p.m. So 4 hours. And if you've ever wondered how motorcycle jackets, pants, gloves are tested, then there will be tours of the lab to let you see the test going on close up, and you can talk to the team who do the research on that protective gear. Now, they started off probably, as you know, doing the sort of destruction testing to determine protective function of clothing, but they've branched out into exploring the effects of aging. Chris did a really quite interesting study on body armor, actually, and how laundering affects the strength of clothing too. Now, the lab is located on the Deakin University Warren Ponds campus in building NK. There will be signage to follow from the entrance gates to guide you to it. Now, I was lucky enough myself to visit the lab in 2023 on the way back from Shiny Side up in New Zealand, and I will confirm that if you can make it, it's actually very much worth the visit. And, you know, perhaps I can persuade Chris to make a webcast for virtual visitors at some point in the future. I shall ask. Right, okay, so what about the weather for today? Well, Storm Dave has cleared away from the north. Easter Sunday looks like it's going to be a sort of windy day, sunny spells, plenty of blustery, scattered showers around for most, which will be wintry on the hills in the north and locally thundery in the northwest. Now, early showers will clear from the southeast by lunchtime. The sun has actually just come out in the last hour or so here, and it will be calmer everywhere by evening. It'll be on the chilly side, just 7 in the far north, which is pretty cold for this time of year, to 12 to 13 in the southeast, and that could bring some frost in some places overnight. So do be careful. After a chilly Monday, though, high pressure will begin building over the southeast of England, and that'll bring a drier, somewhat warmer day. Plenty of sun in the south, patchy clouds in the north, but dry for all bar a few drops of rain in the far north. But it will be breezy again in the west. Now, Tuesday looks like it will be another sunny day, but it'll be much milder, especially in the southeast of England, where temperatures could nudge 20 Celsius. Breezy in the north and west, chance of some heavy showers in Northern Ireland and the northwest later in the day. Wednesday looks to be another fine warm day for much of the country, plenty of sun, warm in the south again. Thursday looks like we'll be slipping back towards some cooler weather, some spells of rain, possibly moving into the northwest and moving southeastwards. But that's still up for debate, so keep an eye on the forecast for the end of the week. Right, okay, and on to the news. Now, as I said, there's not actually a lot to report this week. 5 teenagers have been arrested following a police chase from Walsall to Birmingham, and this was linked with stolen motorcycles. And the officers were actually responding to reports of this group attempting to steal bikes from locations around Walsall. And they spotted 3 motorcycles with multiple riders, all wearing balaclavas. And following a short pursuit of one of these bikes, 2 16-year-old boys were stopped and arrested, and the motorcycle was indeed found to be stolen. A second motorcycle was also followed, and the pursuit there was brought to an end by the use of a stinger device, and that was in Birmingham itself. Now, this machine was also discovered to be stolen. It had 3 people on board it, 2 18-year-old men and a 16-year-old boy, and they were all arrested too. Those 3 presumably were the ones taken to hospital to be assessed for injuries. They'll all be questioned in connection with the vehicle theft. Now, on Thursday, the Foreign Office updated guidance for visitors to Thailand, and they are offering warnings about travelling to the south of the country where there is a border dispute with Laos. Now, in at the same time, they reminded visitors that motorcycles and scooters for hire in tourist areas are often unregistered and cannot be used legally on a public road. That's a new one on me. I've not heard that before, but obviously it is worth making sure that you do have a road legal vehicle before you hire it, in case you are stopped by the police and asked some questions. And they continued, before you hire a vehicle, make sure your travel insurance covers you and check the small print of the lease agreement, paying particular attention to any limits or engine size and necessary license. I'm not quite sure what this lease agreement there. You don't lease insurance, it's the insurance agreement I'm sure they're talking about. Anyway, the Foreign Office basically say that you need to hold the correct UK license for the type of motorcycle or scooter you are intending to hire. And if you're not permitted to drive it in the UK, you won't be covered to drive it in Thailand either. You'll basically be breaking their local laws and your insurance policy will almost certainly be invalid. The reminder also covered the need to carry an international driving permit as well as a UK license and the need to wear a helmet. And that, of course, applies wherever you rent a motorcycle. Right, okay, quick break while we carry on. Before always, can I ask you to take a moment to like and subscribe to this show if you've not already done so? Every click helps other motorcyclists discover my content, or simply share the word the old-fashioned way by telling your riding buddies about ELEVENSES. They can watch on catch-up. Remember, my latest riding skills articles are always free, and you can get all the links delivered weekly to your email inbox by subscribing to my newsletter at survivalskills.substack.com. Or you can use this QR code to jump straight to it, when the show's over, of course. No spam, and if you don't like the content, unsubscribe at any time. Right, okay, so what else is going on around the world? And in the UK, well, a golf service station, ironically named really, isn't it, on Sloane Avenue in London's wealthy Chelsea borough was reported to be charging, wait for it, £2.99 per litre for fuel on Friday, with elsewhere, average prices have broken the £1.50 mark. So somebody's making some money out of their fuel there, aren't they? But if you think the UK prices for fuel are bad, Pakistanis face an unprecedented rise of up to 54% as the global oil price spikes as a result of the war in the Middle East. Pakistan's Petroleum Minister Pervez Malik said late on Thursday that the increase was unavoidable. He said the government was compelled to raise prices to 137 rupees, which is 49 US cents, I think, per litre, following a 20% increase last month. The increase adds pressure to a country which is already pretty cash strapped and grappling with high inflation too. So the Pakistani government has unveiled a raft of austerity measures intended to save fuel, including many government offices being moved to a 4-day working week and also making public transport free. Now, in the Punjab, Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz Sharif unveiled a big relief package under a national austerity and savings program, very similar. Public transport will be free across the province, allowing commuters to travel without purchasing tickets. Farmers will receive subsidies for fuel, and motorcyclists will also benefit from a reduced price for up to 20 litres of petrol. In Ireland, the government has fast-tracked new measures widely referred to as Grace's Law, which will ban the use of illegal scrambler bikes in public spaces and give the Garda clearer powers to seize and in some cases destroy vehicles without needing to prove dangerous driving first. Now, these changes are intended to remove the legal ambiguity and strengthen enforcement, and it follows the death of 16-year-old Grace Lynch, who was struck and killed by an illegal e-bike whilst crossing a road in Dublin in January this year. Her death prompted widespread criticism that legislation which had actually been introduced in 2023 had not yet been fully implemented or effectively enforced. Okay, let's head to LA. This is the Los Angeles Fire Department in partnership with YouTube and support from Google.com and the LAFD Foundation. They are hosted here an event to unveil a fleet of 30 high-performance customized electric bikes. This was last week, and they'll be getting 20 of these machines, which have been donated by YouTube. The bikes will be used for rescues and accessing different terrain or natural disasters where traditional fire apparatus cannot reach. If you do know Los Angeles, you'll know that whilst the city is sort of conventional city, the suburbs extend out into ranges of mountains, and they can be very difficult to access indeed. So it will expand the LAFD's capacity for wildfire detection and rapid medical response. Just realised that the item there that I quoted said wildlife detection. I think I'm definitely right with wildfire detection. Anyway, moving on rapidly, here's another story that you may not have heard unless you follow racing, and this is the Chinese manufacturer ZXMOTO securing a historic double victory in the World Supersport races at the recent Portuguese round of the FIM Superbike World Championship. It's the first time a Chinese manufacturer has reached the top step of the podium in this class, and the rider involved was Valentin Debise, if I can find his picture. There he is. He was racing his ZXMOTO factory Evan Brothers Racing 820RR RS, lots of R's, and he claimed both races. It was at the Autodromo Internacional de Algarve. In race one, he led from start apparently to the finish, finishing nearly 4 seconds clear of the field, and he completed his clean sweep in the second race the other day. Now, not surprisingly, the Chinese media, including their state media, has been making quite a deal of this. The People's Daily hailed the result as a historic breakthrough and an epoch-making moment. Now, the result follows sort of a broader trend with Chinese machinery already having broken through at the international level. Recent title win, you may recall, in World Supersport 300 class, and it signals a growing competitive presence in at least production-based racing, long dominated by European and Japanese manufacturers. Now, what's really interesting, I think, is the sort of rider sentiment. Debise made it clear he was committing to the team, despite, sort of regardless of which bike they chose. And then when they did pick the Chinese motorcycle, apparently he bought into it because its performance was established. Now, the willingness here amongst established European riders to stake their careers on relatively new Chinese hardware really does contrast pretty strongly with the lingering skepticism in markets like the UK, where there are concerns still over build quality and long-term durability. On track at least, these results really are being challenged by the results. Right, now a quick break. If you enjoy these shows, why not become a member of my Ko-fi pages? Just follow the QR code and sign up. As a member, you get free access to the latest articles and the Survival Skills ebook shop with instant downloads of everything from free mini ebooks to ebook versions of my paperbacks. Become a one-off supporter and you'll open up the archive of over 1,000 articles. If you buy me a monthly cuppa as a subscriber, there's even more content to enjoy. Right, okay, on to some news about motorcycles then. Brembo's move to fit its Hiction, whatever that means, carbon ceramic discs to a road bike. They'll be making their debut on the Ducati Superleggera V4. Is claimed to offer a previously unseen braking technology level to motorcycling, but I'd say it's not without its caveats. Historically, carbon ceramic systems need heat to work, so they've been confined to the track where braking is obviously heavy and sustained. So for road use, I'd say there must be at least a question over whether riders will consistently get the discs up to their operating temperature window, particularly in cool and wet conditions. Presumably Brembo have thought about this. There are also longer term considerations around wear, which produces fine particulates, an issue already under scrutiny in emissions discussions. Now, how well the technology will translate to everyday road riding is debatable, particularly since conventional discs are quite capable of standing most motorcycles on their front wheel. I think that remains to be seen. Now, Canadian startup Northforge has announced plans for a domestically built electric motorcycle aimed at military use. The bike, called the Dispatch, is being developed as a lightweight reconnaissance and communications platform with import drawn from Canadian and European armed forces. The company is a spin-off from an Alberta-based E-Outdoors Limited, which specializes in industrial applications, electric mobility for industrial use. Says the design brief reflects the realities of military use, where machines are routinely operated beyond their nominal limits. Not quite sure what that means. Northforge claims the Dispatch has been engineered for extreme durability, including repeated drops under load, operation in harsh environments ranging from sub-zero conditions to high humidity, and for use on difficult terrain such as sand. No technical specs have yet been released, so key details like range, power output, weight, charging capability are all unknowns. Basically there have been some similar defense focused electric projects. I reported on one quite a few years ago now, which involved the British Army, but the gap between these sort of stated durability goals and real world performance, it will be critical if this is to move beyond the prototype stage. Now, a bike which I've talked about quite a lot over the last few years, which has moved beyond the prototype stage, apparently, is the new solid state powered Verge motorcycles. The solid state battery, you'll recall, was created by the Verge subsidiary Donut Labs, and this is apparently now in production, and it seems like the 2026 Verge TS Pro with that solid state battery is now being delivered to early reservation holders, and fresh orders are expected to head out towards the end of the year. Now, the bike starts at $30,000 for the standard battery configuration. If you take the extended range pack, that takes the total up to $34,900 before taxes and fees. Obviously, if you're in the UK, that's 20% VAT to be added to the converted price. So I doubt you'll be seeing them cluttering up bike parking bays anytime soon. And here's another bike which has singularly failed to clutter up bike parking bays. And this is the Suzuki 800 range. Now, after announcing that both the GSX 8T and the 8TT would be available with a £1,000 deposit contribution, i.e. a price cut back in January, barely a few weeks after the bikes had been announced. Suzuki have now confirmed that both machines have actually had a permanent cut of that £1,000. So the GSX 8T now retails at $8,599 on the road, and the TT version at $8,999. The fact that I've not actually seen even one of these machines on the road yet might have something to do with Suzuki's somewhat unusual decision to cut prices rather than raise them. But to be honest, I thought they were seriously overpriced at launch. The GSX S1000 GT Plus, these names get longer and longer and less cumbersome. Do I mean less cumbersome? Less, or more cumbersome, of course. It's also had £1,000 knocked off the on the road price, which means that it's now 11,999, which is actually £2,000 cheaper than when the model was announced. It also puts it at £1,700 less than the Ninja 1100 SX Tourer from Kawasaki. Now, Honda, I'm going to zoom in on this picture because I think it's a lovely looking bike. Honda appears to be edging back towards a part of the market they actually dominated at one time and have long since abandoned. And this is the CB400 version of the 500cc four-cylinder concepts that were previewed last year alongside the larger CB1000F with sort of Euro styling, retro 80s look. Now, this was shown at recent Japanese and Chinese shows, and it also implies a revival of the Super 4 name. And as you can see, the bike combines some classic design cues, but it also comes with some modern tech, such as ride-by-wire and the e-clutch system that Honda have been developing. Now, production plans and whether that would include UK distribution, that's not clear. But it does indicate that smaller capacity inline four roadsters and sports bike could once again sit towards the lower part of Honda's model range. Now, that's pretty significant when you consider Honda's own history. Bikes like the CB 404 were huge successes in the 1970s, offering accessible performance, distinctive styling, and real-world usability. And that's a formula that seems to be resonating with motorcyclists once again today. And in recent years, as you probably noticed, there have been strong sales of smaller, simpler models, which suggests that there is a shift away from the complex, high-performance flagships. They'll always sell to a certain type of buyer, but they are getting increasingly expensive and arguably less relevant for everyday riding. So a return to the 400cc class could signal that Honda are recognizing that the sweet spot isn't so much at the extreme end of performance where it used to be, but actually somewhere much closer to where most riders actually live. And that exhaust system, it's quite as gorgeous as the original CB404s. I had several of those back in the late 70s, right into the middle of the 1980s. So lovely, lovely looking bike, I think. Right, okay. So if that bike harks back to a successful, if fairly short-lived model from the past, here's one of the newest historic revivals. It's the BSA Bantam 350. Let me give you a zoom in on view of that as well. And as you can see, it's been hooked up to a Watsonian Squire SB1 sidecar, recreating, say, Watsonian a timeless appearance which complements the Bantam's retro style. Now, the sidecar outfit is built at Watsonian's Cotswolds factory, and the chassis is already set up with the sort of the correct toe-in, lean-out, and axle lead, all the technical stuff you need when you're designing a sidecar outfit, which matches the bike. And the LED lights, they come ready wired up and to plug straight into the motorcycle's wiring loom. The sidecar itself can be detached and reattached by the owner. Instructions are supplied with the outfit. And Watsonian's managing director, Ben Matthews, said The 29 bhp Bantam is more than capable of powering a lightweight sidecar, and it's the perfect introduction to a bit on the side for novices. Now, I left the best bit till last, £8,995. That's the price of the Bantam with the sidecar, including VAT and on-the-road charges. Yes, that is the full outfit, motorcycle and sidecar. So, could we see a rebirth of the outfit? Well, it's actually quite tempting at that kind of price, isn't it? It rather neatly leads me actually into today's other final in-depth item, which pretty much takes us to the opposite extreme. So here we go. So the question today is, can a motorcycle have too much technology? Now, it's particularly pertinent question given the sellout success of bikes like the baby BSA we've just seen and Honda's GB350, which has been notching up some serious sales. This question's been quietly creeping up on us, I think, for a few years. Can we have too much tech on a bike? Because if you look at something like Yamaha's Tracer 9 GT Plus, it's no longer a simple machine rider system. The bike itself is increasingly making decisions for the rider. You've got that semi-automatic gearbox, you've got radar control cruise control, you've got semi-active suspension that's reading the road in real time, and you've got headlights that decide where they're going to shine. Now, at some point, do we need to stop and ask, is this still a motorcycle? Now, the review I read last week makes a very clear and positive case for the machine. After 1,000 miles across the UK, the Cornwall, the Dales, the Pennines, the Lake District, the rider's conclusion was essentially it just works. Now, his impressions were that the gearbox faded into the background, the suspension smoothed everything out beautifully, and the cruise control anticipated what he was about to do. And his conclusion at the end of the article was that Yamaha hasn't added bells and whistles for the sake of it, it has integrated it. And that's what makes this bike feel less like a showcase of gadgets and more like a genuinely enjoyable way to ride. And the key phrase I think says it all, you stop noticing it. Now, the rider certainly presents this as a positive, and certainly it can be seen that way. When we are on a bike which is covering big miles, let me just bring the picture up for you. There's the article in question with the headline and the motorcycle there. When we're covering big miles, anything that reduces workload and the mental effort of riding is going to feel like an improvement, particularly if it means we arrive at the end of the journey less fatigued. Now, I rode the 1980 version of the Tracer 900 for 3,000 miles around New Zealand in February that year. Now, the bike was equipped with ABS and nothing much else, nothing fancy, certainly. And some of those days, I will admit, were pretty knackering. New Zealand roads aren't the easiest to ride on. They're not quite as technical as the road in the picture, which I suspect is the Lake District. But I would have arrived perhaps rather less tired each day, sometimes needing to go and do a presentation after I'd got off the bike, had the bike been taking some of the workload off my shoulders. But I do have a couple of questions that the rider didn't actually address. The first one is, yes, the technology works when new. I should bloody well hope so. But what happens when the bike isn't? And then there's a second question. This one is more subtle. What does all this help do to the rider's decision-making processes? Does the bike start to shape the ride rather than the rider shaping it? Here's what I'm talking about. Now, one of the standout features in the review is regarding the suspension. It's described as almost uncanny. The bike reads the behavior of the front wheel and, let me quote the article, quote, adjusts almost instantly before the rear hits the same bump. The result is a level of composure that feels almost unnatural at first. You brace for the impact and it just isn't there. Once you trust it, though, the ride is superb. The bike stays planted, stable and confidence inspiring even when the road surface is trying its best to catch you out. Now, the bike uses a series of sort of cameras to try and work out what the road surface is doing before you get there. And that sounds brilliant, but it also raises a question. If the bike is constantly removing these disturbances, is the rider actually receiving less information, and is that affecting the rider's decision making? Now, let me explain what I mean here. Traditional rider aids, things like ABS and traction control, which have become accepted on modern bikes, they're fundamentally reactive safety systems. They will sit there doing absolutely nothing right up to the moment when we either exceed the available grip under braking, or we give the bike too much of a handful of throttle and the rear wheel slip exceeds the thresholds set by the designers. But in each case, this is a correction to a rider input. It's not a replacement for a rider input. The model here is basically rider makes decisions, system catches mistakes. It's a safety net, and at least in the shape of ABS, it's something I'm fully in support of. But the system on the Tracer isn't waiting for us to get it wrong. The suspension system, for example, is operating all the time. And so if the bike itself is smoothing out surface changes, weight transfer, and feedback through the chassis, are we actually riding more safely because the bike is helping out, or just more comfortably? If the bike feels calmer, more planted, more capable, and generally more forgiving of the road surface, is it going to encourage the road user, rider rather, to do something more extreme? Are they going to be encouraged to place this extra reliance on the machine's stability on surfaces that really don't warrant it? Are these continuously adaptive systems actually skill displacing? Now, without some serious scientific studies on the effect on ordinary riders, rather than having test pilots just show off the system, we really don't know the answer to that question. But I think the article does give us a very strong hint. If a bike increases the rider's sense of confidence without necessarily increasing the rider's understanding of how close the bike is to its limits at any particular moment, you can see where that might lead. So what about the other question? Reliability and longevity of the technology itself. Now, most of this has come from the car world, but motorcycles live a very different life to cars. This tech is now being bolted onto something that spends its life out in the rain, being blasted with salt in winter, and likely pressure washed to keep it clean. And electronics really don't love that kind of treatment. Now, if you look at cars where this sort of tech is fairly well established, the pattern's pretty consistent. When they're new, brilliant. 5, 6, 7 years down the line, well, that's when you may start to see warning lights coming on telling you about a system failure. Now, we can't simply ignore it anymore either. The mid-90s BMW I rode that had a ABS has failed light lit up. The bike was just fine. All that happened was the ABS wasn't working, and I had to rely on my own skills for braking. But now a warning light is not just an instant MOT failure here in the UK, but it's also potentially a bike immobilizer. Someone I know was brought to a halt by a sensor problem on the ABS on a later model BMW than the one I was riding. As soon as they stopped and turned the ignition off, they were refueling at a petrol station, the bike prevented the rider from restarting, and it basically delivered an error message which said, get the bike recovered to a BMW service centre and get it fixed. Now, unfortunately, the bike was in the middle of Senegal at the time, so it really wasn't the simple case of waiting at the roadside for BMW to come and fetch you. So will this hardware still work when the bike's sort of north of 50,000 miles on its 5th or 6th British winter? How long will Yamaha support it? That's another good question. When will they turn off the production of spare parts? Motorcycle production runs are pretty short, generally speaking, and that doesn't encourage keeping replacement part runs going. And finally, I noticed one teeny little omission from the report on the magazine, and that was the size of dent in your wallet. I have to admit I struggled with the configurator. Is that even a word? But eventually I did get it to work, and I took the base model, which is already a whopping £16,700. Contrast that with the Suzuki and the Kawasaki that I mentioned earlier. It's £5,000 more expensive, up to over £20,000, all by adding a few functional add-ons like keyless luggage, engine bars, so uprated fog lights and indicators, and a heated seat front and rear. If you want to read the article, I've just posted the link for you. But I think, the questions I've posed are ones that we actually need to think about. We need some answers. Maybe, just maybe, there is some sense in going back to basics and buying bikes like that GB350 and that BSA Bantam. Right, okay, that is pretty much it for today. I just want to thank my supporters from last week. Quick shout out to supporters and subscribers Ray and Javi, who both downloaded my latest Crash Scene Overtake ebook. James, Kelvin, Hallam, Brian, Michael, Dave, Helen, Brian, and Anonymous. Thank you all very much indeed for your support. It's all much appreciated, which leads me directly to the Crash Scene books. If you are interested in these, there is now the complete set of 3. Let me just get the link up for those. They've all been reformatted with an integral cover on the ebooks as well, and they take a look at the 3 common sort of gotchas for motorcyclists. Crash Scene Corner, in-depth look at the most common open road crash. That's the one where rider gets a bend wrong. Crash Scene Junction, that tackles the sorry mate I didn't see you smidzy collision between drivers and riders at intersections. That's still the most common collision of all. And the third is Crash Scene Overtake, which investigates the third of these standard crashes, but it's the one that often has the most serious consequences for the rider. Now, all 3 books, they do approach riding skills from the opposite angle to the usual ride better and you won't crash approach. Turns it on its head. I explain how even skilled and experienced riders can get things wrong, and I provide you with the clues to avoid making the same mistakes and some hints on how to get out of trouble when you need to. Now, I've been promising this for a while, but trust me, paperbacks are in preparation now and hopefully will be available very soon. Right, okay, now there was a comment that I meant to come back to. I've lost it. Where is it? I'm sure when Japanese bikes started winning GPs in the 1960s, there would have been widespread skepticism about the viability of their bikes compared to established products. It didn't last just through the 60s. I remember when I was at college in the mid to late 70s, there were still some diehards in the motorcycle club at the university who insisted that British bikes were still far superior. I still remember the guy with the 350 single. I think, what was it? I think it was a BSA. I remember that used to catch fire at fairly regular intervals as the thing spat backwards out of the carburetor and sort of basically splattered fuel and flames between his thighs. Yeah, Howie thought that was better than my little 125 that I just put petrol in and rode. I have no idea. Anyway, there we go. That's it for today. Thank you very much indeed for looking in. Thanks to everybody who will look in on catch up. And you've been watching me, Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Train. This has been Elevenses, and make a date to join me for the next show, another roundup of news, views, and biking tips. And if you are out there on your bike today, as I said, it looks like a fairly fine day here in the south of England, if rather chilly. Make sure you stay shiny side up, and then I will see you next time round.